Today I'm going to be covering electrical connections, how to solder them, how to properly crimp and then seal them. A lot of your aftermarket harnesses, stuff like that, they don't provide the best connections for stuff. I may get some flack for that, but I actually don't like using butt connectors or just standard style like crimp connectors with open end barrels, just because you don't really get the best seal and it can cause corrosion and cause electrical problems later on. So we're going to show you how to do some proper connection hookup. That way you can prevent any later issues you have. We're going to cut that off. We're just going to solder it straight in. I just don't really trust them. They don't really have the best connection. And also they're kind of open on the ends too, so you can get corrosion in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut that off and we're just going to wire it directly, solder it, and use heat shrink. We're going to strip back some insulation on this. Cut it as close as possible so we have as much of a lead. Alright, and then we're going to use heat shrink. Start warming the torch up. Alright, everybody's got their own way of doing this. I just kind of wrap them around each other. I've had no issues. I've done tons and tons of connections like this. I've never had an issue with it. Just want to make sure you get a lot of coverage. And something you also want to do is make sure you put on your heat shrink beforehand, like I just forgot to do. Now we could trim it down, but I like to give as much coverage as possible. And we got a long enough lead here. I mean, you can trim it down and be all right. Slide it back as far as you can. Keep it away from the heat. That way it doesn't shrink down there. Also pulled the conduit back. That way it doesn't melt the conduit, because that torch does get pretty hot. I mean, you can just crimp it together, but if you want this to be a permanent fix and not have to replace connections later, this is the best way to do it. Alright, so while the torch is heating up, grab our solder. It's called tinning, getting it started up. What you do is you heat up the wire. The solder will draw in. See, it's completely covered. Try and pull on it and see if it'll break. But yeah, you want it completely covered around, and then slide your heat shrink over. Much better than a boat connector. You can see there's even little gaps in there. I mean, you're going to get corrosion in there. This is just a long-term fix for that. And then we're going to move on to here. We're going to crimp on those two eyelet connections, and then we are going to solder them and then heat shrink them. I'll show you how that's done. So we'll slide on our eyelet here, and then we'll crimp this connection. Crimping pliers. then we have a crimp connection here. Crimp all the way down. Okay. Well, it's not coming off of there. It's not coming off of there. I would say that's good enough. We'll just slide some heat shrink on it. We won't need to do any soldering onto there. Factory connection is going to be a same as that, just a crimp connection. This torch has a little vent port on there, so heats up well enough to seal this up. Do this side. Okay. What we'll do is I'll put a little bit of liquid electrical tape right there, kind of seal that off even further, just because I don't like having exposed copper.
Ooh.
So what we'll do is just dab it on there. And some people say it might be overkill, it's not really necessary, but I don't like having exposed connections.
And why not?
Well, because you get corrosion in there, especially since these are going to be mounted to the battery terminal, and most of your vehicles are going to use a lead acid battery. They leak sometimes, and that can cause corrosion on these terminals, cause weird electrical problems. So it's better just to seal everything up. Let that dry. This is pretty much what it should look like. You guys saw that solder connection, just cutting out that butt connector and sealing that wire. And then after that liquid electrical tape dried, that's what it should look like. No exposed copper, nothing sitting out, everything's sealed up. That way you get no corrosion on the stuff. Well, this is at least how I do it. I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there that's like, that's not how you do it. This is how I do it. I've been doing it for years and years and years like this. I've never had an issue. It works for me. Surely it'll work for you. Thanks for watching.